Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. My next guest is a Hall of Famer, a wide receiver extraordinaire, one of the greatest wide receivers in the history of the National Football League. All he did was catch touchdowns. That's all he did. But guess what? We ain't gonna start off talking to my boy Chris Carter about the National Football League because this brother went to the Ohio State. This brother watched Ohio State get beat by Michigan, an average Michigan team this year. I'll get into that in a minute, but the biggest issue, CC, it is good to see you, my brother. Hope you and your family had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Gotta ask you about this whole flag planting situation that developed. A damn melee broke out after the game where cats had to get pepper sprayed and even a cop had to go to the hospital because of the ruckus that took place after your Ohio State Buckeyes lost to Michigan. What do you have to say about that?
Well, for one, I think that this is part of this new generation of kids that are so offended. They take everything so personal. And this is totally different than the pro game, Stephen, because typically after in college, more guys linger on the field. Typically, there's a singing of the fight songs down towards your fan section. If you're on the road, wherever you travel, wherever that section is, the team runs down there, sings the fight song there.
Right.
So in college, they're on the field a lot longer. So from an administrative standpoint, you have to be able to find people, the presidents of these universities, these athletic directors, because it's okay for fans to storm the field if they don't have security. But for players participating in it, that's totally, that's where I'm lost. Like, you should stay with your teammates, stay with your coaches, and then get to the locker room. What the fans decide to do or the students decide to do, that's totally up to them. At that point, I'm not with them. I'm with my unit, that happens to be the football team. And in college, there's a huge problem as far as security, running onto the field.
Okay.
So there's more people out there. And if you give a player a flag, he's going to try to plant it there. And that's something that is just now recently starting to happen in college football compared to all the other years where you never saw this happen.
Well, I saw it with Baker Mayfield years ago when he beat Ohio State, but that's a different subject for another day. I think the thing that really resonates with me, CC, is this. What happened to the sore loser element in all of this? You had 60 minutes to beat Michigan. You had 60 minutes to make sure that they didn't plant, they weren't in a position to plant some flag on your field, but you didn't handle your business. So to me, you Ohio State, you're Florida State, you're people like that, and you didn't handle your business. I mean, it comes across as a bit different that you can't handle losing on that level.
No, absolutely. And whoever wins, to me, within a certain, sportsmanship, they deserve to do whatever they want to do. You had 60 minutes to be able to change the game. You didn't change that game. Now, I'm going to tell you, man, there's guys in the Hall of Fame, Michigan guys, that being Charles Woodson, that being, Tom Brady will soon be there. But I'm very friendly with these guys. And I played in 3 Michigan-Ohio State games. And there were no fights ever broke out afterwards. And there was a greater deal of respect for the players playing. Jim Harbaugh played in all 3 games I played in. I beat him twice, he once. But there was never any disrespect. Even as we've gone on 40 years afterwards, there's never been any disrespect. So I believe that this generation, which they don't respect anything, I believe that now that waters down the rivalry because everything that happened after the game has nothing to do with the greatest rivalry. It actually takes something away from what Michigan accomplished on the field, being a significant 23.5-point underdog.
Yes.
And they haven't beat a team like this since 1978.
CC, you just brought it up. I didn't want to go there because it's after Thanksgiving. And I was trying to be nice to you, man. I didn't want to depress you. I didn't want you to start crying on national television. I didn't want you to sit up there and be that kind of miserable because your Ohio State Buckeyes that were 23.5-point favorites ended up losing this damn game. But I got to get to the coach, Ryan Day. Listen, I'm not going to call for the man's job or anything like that. The man has never lost more than 2 games in a season in his career. Okay, he's 66-10 as a head coach, all right? Never won a national championship, but certainly he's been a big-time coach, except for when it comes to Michigan. He's lost 4 straight now to Michigan. And it wasn't Jim Harbaugh coaching the Wolverines Saturday against him. It was Sharon Moore. And they beat Ohio State. How, as an alumni member, all right, a guy that started Ohio State, how are you feeling about Ryan Day as the head coach of your Buckeyes right now?
Well, I don't feel great. because the number one thing to do at Ohio State is to beat Michigan. So if you look at losing 4 in a row, now I think we had ran off 9 in a row before we lost this 4 in a row.
Right.
But man, we can't even remember that, because this 4 in a row, it's historic. You know, this is historically one of the most talented teams, but it's historically the seniors are leaving without having any gold pants of beating Michigan. So if your number one goal is to come to an operation and beat someone, and you've done that 1 out of 5 times, unless you want a national championship, yeah, your job should be on the line. At Ohio State, the standards are higher. They have the number one roster in college football. They spent $20 million on the collective to be able to put that roster out there. And yes, I know they're missing 3 offensive linemen, but you don't go into a phone booth fight with Michigan when their best players are on their defensive front. Their linebackers were hurting, their secondary was hurting, their corners were hurting. Like, make it a track meet. Like, we have that kind of talent at Ohio State. You don't want to get into a MMA fight with Michigan. They played the game that Michigan wanted. Michigan got the ball on the 2-yard line and scored 1 touchdown. That's it. And you lose that game? Yes. If you lose that game with that roster at home, your job should be in question at Ohio State. Yes. Chris Carter said that about Ryan Day. His job should be in question. And if he doesn't win the college football playoff, I wouldn't be shocked, under the new athletic director, who's only been there since the beginning of the season, that if he moved on. This is the same athletic director that bought out Jimbo Fisher with that tremendous buyout at Texas A&M.
Right.
So Ohio State's got more money than Texas A&M.
So check this out. Am I interpreting this right? Are you saying, Chris Carter, that at this moment it should be in question? That much is a given. That much is clear. That if Ryan Day doesn't win the national championship, if he doesn't get to the college football playoffs, and they win the national championship this year, that Ryan Day should be fired? Are you saying he should be fired?
Yes. If you go 1-4 against Michigan, anything else that you do besides win the national championship, my coach at Ohio State, Earl Bruce, went 9-3 a couple seasons. They fired him. John Cooper, he had all the Heisman Trophy winners. He had all the big first-round draft pick, Outland Trophy winners. That era was before, we got to the Urban Meyer. And let me tell you a conversation that me and Urban Meyer had several years ago before he stepped down at Ohio State. Coach, what kind of team you got? Chris, it's not a matter of what kind of team do I have. We got a program right now that we should win 2 out of the next 3, 2 out of the next 4 national championship teams. And then Ryan Day took over. If you look at the quarterbacks that he's had, if you look at the offensive productivity he's had, and lack of them to win the big one, but one time, and no national championship game, yes, your job will be in jeopardy at Ohio State, just like his is.
Damn. Okay, Ryan Day on the clock, no question about that. Let's transition to the National Football League, CC. I saw Baltimore lose a game last night to the Philadelphia Eagles. Did the Baltimore Ravens lose to the best team in football?
No, I'm not going to say that. Philadelphia is playing well, but we have to, and you've been beating it in my head, the first 2 months of the season, the Detroit Lions, man, are for real. Like, we need to put some respect on everything that they do. They don't have any question marks from a special team standpoint. Defensively, if you look what Aaron Glenn is doing since Hutchinson got hurt, they're still getting to the passer. They're creating turnovers. I mean, and Ben Johnson from an offensive mind, if you want to watch exciting play calling, if you want to watch concepts that no other team is doing, and your boy Dan Orlovsky, he shows it a lot. He diagrams, he puts the plays up. Phenomenal job. They are the most difficult team to be able to guard in what they're going to do and how he distributes the football. So, yes, Detroit Lions to me are still a little bit ahead of the Philadelphia Eagles and the outstanding season that they're having.
I was going to wait till later to ask this question, but since you brought up Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, if you're the Chicago Bears who let go of Eberflus, we don't need to pay any attention to that because we both know his ass deserved to be gone. Ain't no question about that. I'd have made him pay for his own flight back to Chicago after that loss on Thanksgiving Day. I'm serious. I'd have made him pay for himself, right? But having said all of that, is Ben Johnson a better candidate for the head coaching job in Chicago next season rather than a Cliff Kingsbury with the Commanders, rather than a Kellen Moore with the Eagles?
Well, number 3, I'd say Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore has no experience as a head coach, and I still question some of his offensive coordinator leadership.
Okay.
I do believe Cliff Kingsbury, you and I talked about that he will get a second chance. I do believe that he has come up with a plan B and C on that type of offense, because typically in a pass-heavy offense, in his first couple of years in Arizona, he struggled with screen passes. He struggled with protection, some of the same things they struggle with in college football. I think he's worked some of those out. You can see that in Washington, how effective their offense is, and
Okay.
the physical presence that Washington has more so than Arizona. But Ben Johnson is the number one candidate. And if you're Kevin Warren, who happens to be one of my good friends, not only are you trying to find a competent candidate, but if I can weaken someone in the division, if I can take away one of Campbell's lieutenants and Ben and put him over my program and weaken your program in the same way the Philadelphia weakened the New York Giants. And now they didn't cut Danny Dimes. Danny is like a half a penny right now. When they decide not to sign Saquon, Philadelphia and their great general manager, they weakened one of the opposition. And if you look at Dan Quinn in Washington as a head coach, what'd he do? He got a lot of the reserves from the Cowboys. That weakened the Cowboys. So it's effective, man, when you can take someone away from someone in your division and affect them in a negative way and help your program. Yes, do that immediately.
Is it a two-horse race in the NFC, or should we be paying attention more significantly, not just to your Minnesota Vikings, but dare I say to the Green Bay Packers?
Well, Green Bay, even though they haven't played well offensively, they are still a very, very talented team. And given any given Sunday, man, in the playoffs, Jalen Hurts doesn't have the type of game. Barkley, somehow they forget to give him 15 to 20 touches, which we see happen in the playoffs all the time. Then with talented quarterbacks, with talented offensive players, which Green Bay and Minnesota have, if they get into a shootout, both these teams, they can match you shot for shot if you get into a shootout. Philadelphia's defense, to me, is what puts them at the elite level. They're a lot like Kansas City's been the last couple of years. People talk about Patrick Mahomes, Kelsey. Their defense is what won them those back-to-back Super Bowls. So Philadelphia right now, I love the way their defense is playing and getting to the quarterback and turning the football over multiple times a game.
Let's transition to the AFC. Listen, man, I'm looking at the Baltimore Ravens. First of all, I don't want to hear anything more about Lamar Jackson being an MVP. One of the lead. Listen, I love him. I hope he wins. I hope he wins the championship. But I don't want to hear anything about him being the MVP right now. They've got 5 losses on the season. 2 of them have come to last place teams. You've lost to Pittsburgh, who couldn't score a touchdown, just scored 6 field goals. Now, yesterday, you were held to 12 points by the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm looking at the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills being a 2-horse race in the AFC. To that, you say what?
Who would argue with you? I mean, Buffalo, what they did, man, if they get snow every week, you can bank them going all the way to New Orleans.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the only team in the NFL could have played in that snow. But Josh Allen's overall development with the head coach, because they've suffered some January losses, man. Like, they've suffered some end-of-the-season losses, very, very tough, where even they played well. But getting rid of some names that people talk about and just adding more glue players and no one crying for the football every single week, they seem to be better with less. Very seldom you ever see this in the NFL, see. Get better with less talent than they have been the last several years. And that's what they are doing in Buffalo, and you got to respect that. And if they happen to get home field advantage, hey, man, that thing is real. That weather is real.
No question, but I think Kansas City can handle that. Nobody else in the AFC, but I think Pittsburgh, I'm still not giving them that kind of love, even though Russell Wilson threw for over 400 yards yesterday. But hell, you could probably catch over 200 yards at this stage of your career against that Cincinnati defense. There's something that I don't know what the hell is up with them. But if you're a wide receiver, particularly a Stephon Diggs, who's out for the year after getting hurt in Houston, or a Gabe Davis, who's with the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you're one of those dudes, how are you feeling about looking at Buffalo, looking the way that they're looking this year?
Oh, you know the truth. Like, you know the truth. Gabe went down there and he's playing with Trevor Lawrence. He knows Trevor Lawrence is not that guy. He knows that. And even being in Houston, with my guy, CJ Stroud. CJ's not having the season he had last year, and then now having the knee injury. That gives you a different perspective in life. Like, oh man, I look back on it and be like, Josh Allen was that guy, man. Did I open up my mouth just a little too much? With wide receivers, we got a propensity to be able to do that on a regular basis from generation to generation. The 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and now in 2024, we still got the same thing. So this really affirms Josh Allen and his ability to play with less talent, the way Tom Brady had to do and others had to do.
Chris, putting you on the spot. Remember, the list is fluid. You got the right to change your mind. But last question to you. If you had to pick a team out of the AFC and out of the NFC to meet in the Super Bowl right now, following Week 12, who would it be?
I'm going with opening night 2 years ago, spectacular night in Arrowhead, but this will be in New Orleans. I'm going with the Detroit Lions versus Kansas City for a chance to three-peat. That's what I'm going with. Dan Campbell and what he is doing, the sound bites that come out of the locker room, how he responds in in-game situation, doesn't look like he's lost like the way he did a couple times last year in the playoffs and in the previous years, because he's a different guy. But you can see he's got full command of this team. Man, they got 2 running backs, got 10 rushing touchdowns. They got a receiver, got 10 touchdowns. Like, man, they can score the football, man, at the elite level. And their defense, typically for a team that's that elite offensively, their defense is way better than people are giving them credit for. That is a championship combination right there.
Well, I would say this to you. Right now, I would disagree with you on the AFC. I think the Buffalo Bills can pull it off because I don't like what I'm seeing from Kansas City's defense over the last 4 or 5 weeks or so. They've really trailed off in terms of their third down possessions and what they've allowed QBR against opposing quarterbacks as well. They're one of the worst in the league right now. So I would say right now, Buffalo and Detroit, to be quite honest with you. But I reserve the right to change my mind. CC, appreciate you, bro. I'm glad you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Looking forward to talking to you next week, all right?
I appreciate you, dog.
All right. My man, CC. Always appreciate the knowledge. Always, always, always.